something very strange may have just been found hiding in the early universe. It looks a bit like a star, it has some features we would normally associate with a star, except buried inside it appears to be a rapidly feeding black hole. And somehow that wasn't even the only bizarre black hole discovery this week, because James Webb has also found 3 massive black holes living inside the same young galaxy, and back here on Earth, millions of people looked up as the moon literally turned day into night across parts of Europe. So yeah, as always, space had a very busy week. But let's start with this thing, because astronomers are calling it a black hole star. Look at this. Its name is MOM-BH star-1, and the light we are seeing from it has been traveling towards us for roughly 13 billion years. That means we are seeing this object as it existed only around 660 million years after the Big Bang. And astronomers weren't expecting it to look quite like this, because when researchers used James Webb to study its spectrum, they found evidence for something normally associated with stars called Balmer break. You don't really need to remember the name, what's important is that the signal was incredibly strong. Stronger than what astronomers normally see in young galaxies, normal stellar populations, or even another mysterious population of objects Webb has been finding in the early universe. Those tiny red objects are appropriately called little red dots. And we've got a problem with them. Since Webb began looking deep into the early universe, astronomers have found hundreds of these compact, extremely red objects. At first glance, you might assume they are simply young galaxies buried behind lots of dust. Except some of them seem to contain actively feeding black holes. And those black holes already appear unusually large for how young the universe was. So astronomers have been trying to figure out exactly what we are looking at. And this latest discovery may finally give us a clue. Now, if the phrase black hole star sounds familiar, there's actually a reason. I've already made an entire video about these things. And when I covered them, the fascinating part was that objects like these were largely an idea for explaining one of the biggest problems in astronomy. How do you get an enormous black hole when the universe hasn't given you enough time to build one? And now we may actually be looking at something very similar. Because despite the name, this isn't really a normal star with a black hole sitting inside it. The team's model suggests we are seeing a rapidly feeding black hole surrounded by an incredibly dense, turbulent envelope of hydrogen gas. This is galaxy J0148-4214, and once again we are looking incredibly far into the past. Its light has traveled for more than 12.5 billion years, meaning we are seeing this galaxy as it existed roughly 1.2 billion years after the Big Bang. But when astronomers use Webb's instruments to separate the light coming from different parts of this galaxy, they found not one active black hole, not 2, but 3. All inside the same galaxy. 2 are crowded together close to its center, and the third is sitting much further out. And these aren't tiny black holes either. The largest contains roughly 80 million times the mass of our Sun. Another is around 2 million solar masses, and the smallest of the 3 is roughly 600,000 solar masses. Although smallest is doing some fairly heroic work in that sentence. The 2 central black holes are separated by only about 620 light years. That might sound huge, because it is, but on the scale of a galaxy, these things are practically neighbors. And researchers expected that pair to eventually merge within the next few hundred million years. The third black hole sits around 5,500 light years from the center. And together they give us an incredible look at just how messy galaxies could be when the universe was young. Because galaxies don't quietly grow alone. They interact, they collide, they consume smaller galaxies. And when galaxies merge, the black holes living inside them can eventually be brought together as well. So now go back to the problem from the first story. How did the early universe produce enormous black holes so quickly? Some black holes may have grown incredibly quickly by feeding inside these dense clouds of gas. Others may have gained mass through repeated mergers. And in this galaxy, we may actually be catching that process midway through. Researchers say this is the first evidence of 3 active massive black holes inside a single galaxy in the distant universe. And for our last story, unlike those first 2 stories, millions of people could simply walk outside and see them. On 12th of August, the moon passed directly between Earth and the Sun. Its shadow crossed Greenland and Iceland before reaching northern Portugal and Spain. Inside that narrow path, the Sun disappeared. For a brief moment, daylight collapsed into darkness as the moon completely covered the bright solar disk and exposed the Sun's corona. Most of Europe didn't get totality, but huge areas still saw a partial eclipse. And we didn't just watch this from the ground. ESA's Meteostat 3rd generation imager satellite, sitting roughly 36,000 kilometers above Earth, watched the moon's shadow sweep across the planet. And honestly, look at this footage. You can literally see this dark patch moving across Earth and eventually meeting the advancing darkness of sunset over Europe. There is something slightly surreal about seeing an eclipse like this. From the ground, it feels enormous. The whole sky changed, and when I was watching it with my wife, I remember the temperature actually dropped and we didn't get totality. But from space, it's just a shadow racing across a planet. And Europe hadn't experienced a total solar eclipse like this in more than 2 decades. For Spain specifically, it was the first visible total solar eclipse since 1905. But the timing made 12th of August even better, because once the sun went down for real, Earth headed straight into Perseids. The Perseid meteor shower peaked the same night into the early hours of the 13th of August. And this year the timing was almost perfect because 12th of August was also a new moon. No bright moon washing out the sky, just darkness. So within the space of a few hours, people watched the moon block the sun, then watched Earth plow through the remains of a comet. Not bad for a Wednesday. And if you made it this far, subscribe if you would like to see what the universe throws at us next week. Thank you for watching, keep looking up.